Welcome to the IT free training video on effective access. This video will look at how to determine what access a user has to a resource when the permissions for that resource have been evaluated. Effective access is essentially the access that a user receives when they attempt to access a resource. When a user attempts to access a resource, the explicit permissions are first looked at. If the user is not given access via these permissions, inherited permissions are next considered. The result of this process determines if the user is given access. The problem is that when you have organizations with hundreds of groups, it starts becoming difficult to troubleshoot what access a user may have. If your organization starts using the deny permission, nested groups, and inherited permissions, this process can become quite difficult, and when troubleshooting permission issues as the administrator, the process can become even more difficult. With effective access, there are 3 points to remember. First, allow permissions are cumulative. Any allow permissions will be added together to obtain the final result. The second point is deny permissions, override allow. Windows will always check for deny permissions first. If it finds any, the user will be almost always denied access regardless of how many allow permissions have been configured for them. The one exception to this brings us to the last point to remember, which is that explicit permissions take precedence over inherited. This includes the deny permission. This means that explicit permissions are checked first, and then inherited permissions are checked. If there is a deny permission configured using inheritance, and if there are any allow permissions in the explicit permissions are checked first, and the user will be allowed access. If you want to check what effective permissions a user has, Windows has a simple tool to find out the effective access the user has. First, I will open Windows Explorer. And then I will open the properties for the Sales Share by right-clicking it and selecting the option Properties. From the Properties, I will select the tab Security. In this example, I can see there are a number of entries in the permission list for this folder. In this example, 3 different groups have been added to the default entries. Even with only a few extra entries, the list needs to be scrolled down to see it. In a large company that has lots of groups, you can start to understand how complicated managing permissions can become. To see the effective access for a particular user, press the Advanced button at the bottom, and then from the Advanced Security Settings, select the tab Effective Access. This tab will allow the access for a particular user to be tested. In this case, I will select the option Select a User, and then enter in the user John Doe. Under this, you also have the option to select a device if you want to check the access a device has. Under this, you have the option to include a user claim and include a device claim. Once you have entered in the values that you want to test, in this case the user John Doe, press the button View Effective Access. Once I scroll the screen down, you can see all the access that John Doe currently has. There are a few missing. For example, you can see that John Doe does not have permission to delete files or folders. If John Doe rang the help desk saying he was having problems saving files, it may be possible that the software requires the delete permission in order to save. Some software applications create temporary files and require the delete permission in order to delete these temporary files when saving. In some cases, you may need to change the permissions, or in other cases, add the user to a group to fix the access problem. If you want to test out if adding the user to a group will fix the problem, at the top of the screen is the option to add items. When I select this, I will add Sales Manager Group. When the Sales Manager Group is added, if I press the button View Effective Access, this will refresh the view. Notice that when I scroll down, the user John Doe has all the permissions ticked. This will fix the problem the user was having. However, John Doe also has the ability to take ownership of files and change permissions. This may be more access than he requires. You can see that effective access is a quick way to check the permissions a user has and test the effect new groups will have if the user is added to that group. Thanks for watching this video from IT Free Training. This is just one of the free training videos available in this course and others. I hope to see you in other videos from us. Thanks, and see you next time.